Okay. So shall we start with the permission?
Yes,
With
madam,
everyone's
madam, you
talking.
start. Madam,
Okay.
you start.
Sure. A warm good morning to one and all. The goal of any technical institution is to produce skilled, globally competent professionals through quality technical education and to prepare them for immediate employment. Industry engrows these knowledgeable professionals and enhance its production capabilities by contributing the latest technologies. To produce proficient graduates ready for the industry, it is necessary to know the requirements of the industries through industry-institute interaction. Hence, a good and vibrant industry-institute interaction to promote education and entrepreneurship is definitely required. To build good rapport between the industry and the institute, institutes should have memorandum of understanding with the industries. Industry Institute Interaction (III) is the most preferred activity for mutual benefit and growth of industries as well as institutions. It provides the best platform for showcasing the best practices, latest technological advancements, and their implementations and impact on the industry. Also, promotes industry experts to participate in curriculum designs, which plays a significant role in preparing the students ready for the industry. Through III, industries can participate in technical education programs and cross-fertilize ideas for systems improvement. Teaching learning processes can be improved by integrating industrial training to the students, which also provides an exposure of the corporate world. Students should be encouraged to undertake the final year projects in the industry with a joint supervisor from the industry. II promotes development of entrepreneurs, which further leads to rapid increase the research and development activities in both in the industries as well as institutions, which further leads the nation to grow technologically and socio-economically. We at Dr. Dira Patil School of Management very much understands the core importance of industry-institute interaction, and respecting this, we have organized this corporate executive series in which some expertise from the corporates and the industries will be addressing our professional students and will be discussing their viewpoints and try to gather the students' viewpoint. So it would be a common platform wherein the industry and the institutes that are the students will have an opportunity to interact with each other. Today, we have amongst us some of the very expertise and learned industrialists amongst us from FII, that is Forum of Industry and Institutes India. Before starting, I first let me take this opportunity in welcoming all the respectable speakers for the day. Mr. Balasaheb Baibode, who is the CEO Scope P&M Private Limited. Welcome, sir. Please join me with a huge round of applause in welcoming sir. We have amongst us Mr. Ashok Bansali, who is the CA, Chairperson of Industry Relations, FII Virtual CFO Strategic Intervention India Private Limited. Good morning and welcome, sir, to this forum. Also, we have Dr. Satish Marathe, who is the Chairperson of Institute Relations, FII. I take this opportunity to humbly and welcoming all the expertise speakers. So thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule to address our students. So now starting, let me take this another opportunity to introduce you all to the Honorable Director of Dr. Dira Patil School of Management, Dr. E.B. Khedkar, sir. I quickly introduce him to all of you. He is the Vice President at Ajinkya Dira Patil University and Ajinkya Dira Patil Group. He is a former Vice Chancellor at Ajinkya Dira Patil University, Loregaon, Pune. He is the Vice President of Asia Pacific Division and Board Director, Decision Science Institute, USA. He is the Executive President of Association of Management of MBA MNS Institutes in Maharashtra. He is the Director at Dr. Dira Patil School of Management, Loregaon. He is the President at Sri Ganesh Adhyatmik and Sanskritik Pratishthan. He is also Treasurer of Management of Association of MCA Institutes Maharashtra, popularly known as MAMI. He is the President of Mahaganesh Technical Education Society Maharashtra, Vice President and Board Member of Indian Subcontinental Decision Science Institute, New Delhi. He's a secretary of Association of Private Universities and a member of Deccan Chambers of Commerce for Industry and Agriculture and Association of Indian Management School, AIMS, Top Management Consortium at national level. He's a recognized PhD guide in business administration, marketing, organizational management, and financial management. 70 students have been awarded with PhD under his able guidance, and one student has submitted thesis to the university for evaluation, and 7 students are pursuing PhD. He has also been bestowed with various glorious awards, like Shikshan Bhushan Award. Sir, I would request you to kindly address with the opening speech for the day. Over to you, sir. Sir, you are not audible. You have to please unmute yourself.
First of all, good morning to everyone, all the students, all the guests, and our faculty members. I'm happy that our placement and training officer, Dr. Rachna Madam, Ashutosh Khedkar, Nikala Bacha, and their team, they have organized this industry institute interaction, and definitely it will be useful for the students. Now the series will go every Friday with industry institute interactions, and the student will be benefited what is practically going on in the industry and what is expected from the institutions, and various area will be discussed during next year in a continuous basis, and this will be a good things. Every year we organize industry institute interactions, but due to pandemic, no, the physically it is not possible. This online program is going on, but definitely, yes, it will be useful for the students. First of all, I would like to welcome Mr. Balasaheb Dhoipode, CEO, Scope T&M Private Limited, for sparing his valuable timings, and also we need to address to our students a lot of valuable inputs and practical things. I would also like to welcome Mr. Ashok Bansali, Chartered Accountant, Industry Relations, and Virtual CFO, Strategic Intervention India Private Limited, for sparing his valuable time. Even though the march is going on, he might be busy with his work. I would also like to welcome Dr. Satish Marathe, Institute Relations, FII. He is also renowned, you know, educationist as well as industry related persons, and doing a lot of work in the management institution, which I have observed in my last many years. I would like to welcome you, sir. My HOD of Dr. D.Y. Patil School of Management, Dr. O.P. Haldar, HOD of MCA, Dr. D.Y. Patil School of MCA, Professor Jalinder Randal, all other faculty members, non-teaching staff, and students. I don't want to speak on a particular topic because I want to give full timing to the expert, which definitely that will be very useful. And with this, I would like to thank the organizer for organizing this program, and welcome again for all the guests. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for a quick pep talk to our students. Now, without wasting much further time, I may now request Mr. Ashok Bansali, who is CA Chairperson, Industry Relations, FII Virtual CFO, Strategic Intervention India Private Limited, to kindly address our students. Sir, first of all, kindly accept my heartfelt gratitude to be on this event. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, now I request you to kindly address the students.
Thank you, Dr. Khedkar and Professor, for setting the context of this meet. And it's indeed a pleasure for industry and academia institutions to come together. And I also welcome all distinguished guests, Mr. Balasaheb Dhoipode, and all the students and the faculty, and also the entire team at D.Y. Patil university to associate with this program. So now I'll start with a small presentation. Okay, and if you can just confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. While this presentation is just coming up, one second. Okay. So, FII, or Forum of Industry and Institutes, is a brainchild formed with the entire management education professionals, leading management gurus, many faculties, students, and also many experts from the industry. So it's an attempt to bridge the gap between industry and institute or academia. And so, if I can say, collaboration, cooperation, and coexistence between industry and academia is definitely desirable for a long-term sustainable growth of all the stakeholders as well as of the nation, and also to contribute to the nation's GDP. Whilst there have been discussions and many deliberations, now we felt that there is a need, an urgent need to create an ecosystem for both industry and the institutes to work hand in hand and to appreciate the synergy. And thereby, if I came into existence, I'm also grateful to Dr. A.B. Rao, my guru, as well, of us, to form this institution. And our intention and our objective is nothing but to bridge the gap between industry and academia, so that all benefits, and especially the students who have a good 3 to 4 decades ahead of them, and to chart out their careers and to understand how this synergy can help them. Okay, so with that context and backdrop, so as I mentioned, it is an initiative between the industry and academia, and many people are there, and anyone who wants to contribute to society can add to this our endeavors, and we hope that we'll create value in this symbiotic institution. Who are the torch bearers? As I said, industry leaders, management gurus, innovators, and technology evangelists. There may be many entrepreneurs amongst the students who want to start up their own enterprises. I'm grateful to a lot of legendary academicians who have helped us in this journey also. But most important is you, the managers of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Yes, the students, and even those who have worked earlier with work experience and come to do an MBA or an MCA, you are the most important to take the torch of this initiative. So, as you can see in this slide, there is a symbiotic relationship between industry and institute. What the industry does is used by institutes, and what the institute does is used by industry, and thereby it's a very appreciative, excellent symbiotic relationship. Okay, the academia produces graduates who are absorbed by industry, and the institutes produce research about products and services which is used by industry. And so industry, on the other hand, looks for solutions from the academia, and academia, on the other hand, looks for help, funding, and so each fuels each other's growth on a long-term sustainable basis, right? Now let's come to a little bit of expectations. The industry expects that we have market-aligned courses, we have developed skilled manpower who can take up immediate positions in the industry, be problem solvers and team players, and they have solutions for the concerns and the challenges that the industry faces, because the industrial environment and the macroeconomic environment are always dynamic, and the approach is operational. This is what the industry expects. The institute expects that they can get some funding and infrastructure, an equal partnership between industry and institute, help in the placements, and also the industry can also guide what are the skill sets, what are the jobs required for the economy and the industry to take it further. And obviously, institute should have feasible goals, small baby steps, which they can translate it into the courses, the pedagogy, the workshops, and inputs which they give to the students. And as you can see in this the arrow, both fuel each other. Okay, so research is the transfer of money into knowledge. Innovation is the transfer of knowledge into money, and that's how the symbiotic relation is created. What are the benefits, you may ask? Why should we have all this? For the industry, it is an access to a highly qualified resources, researchers, the faculty, innovators, and last but not the least, the students, who are the young lifeblood of the economy and who are also the greatest consumers. The use of expensive research infrastructure is available for the industry, and it is estimated that about 10% of the innovative products and services emanate from the contribution of academic research. So that's a huge contribution. 10% of the innovative products are coming from the academic institutions, the research, and that is a benefit which industry can derive and take forward. For institutes, it's a source of additional funding and also a source for additional suggestions, access to industry equipment, income from licensing or patenting. In fact, collaboration with industry has become an inevitable part of institute funding. And in the West, there's a lot of funding which comes to the institute from industry. And it is also catching up in India. Now also many industries are funding academic research and institutes activities. So, is this industry institute nexus new? No, it is age old. We all, this August audience, know that the nexus and partnership between the academia and industry is not new, but only with the right strategy and open mind, enterprises in both the arena will prosper as well as fuel each other's sustainable growth. And it is indeed a symbiotic relationship. So formation of FII is but an humble attempt to foster this relationship and create a sustainable ecosystem with a win-win approach for success. And I'm grateful to all who have made this event successful. Okay, and focusing the lens on business means better decision making and avoiding the future shock. We have distinguished speakers coming up, but I can only sum up by saying coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. So that is the theme with which we have started. I thank the earlier speakers, Professor and Dr. Khetkar, for setting the tone. Now I would hand it back to Dr. Khetkar and his team to take it forward, and would look forward very, anxiously to listen to Mr. Bala Sahib Doifode. I hope this is an interesting journey for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Ashok sir, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So you're done with your
Please take over. Please take over.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Ashok sir, for addressing the students. We would like to hear from you more in coming futures, and we are just keeping our fingers crossed that both things will get fall in place, and we would love to have you amongst the students inside the traditional classrooms.
Oh,
so
yes, definitely.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Now moving ahead, I would like to introduce you all to the head of the department of Dina Patil School of Management, Dr. O.P. Rangar sir. As he's the HOD of our MBA department. He's also a research guide in the field of marketing, management, and also he is the research head of our research center at D.Y. Patil School of Management. Haldar sir, can you hear me? Haldar sir?
Yes, we can hear you.
Am I audible?
Can hear you.
Now you are audible, Haldar sir. I request Dr. O.P. Haldar sir to kindly address with a speech to the students and the academicians and industry people. Haldar sir, over to you.
Thank you very much, madam. My respected Professor Dr. E.V. Khedkar sir, Vice President Ajinkya D.Y. Patil University and D.Y. Patil Group Lohegam, and Director DYPSM and DYPSO MCA, Mr. Bala Sahib Daipode sir, CEO Cochlear Indian Private Limited, then Mr. Ashok Vansali sir, then Dr. Satish Marathi sir, all are online dignitaries. Good morning, everybody, and good morning to my all faculties and beloved all students. Now, today, according to me, share is going on, madam.
So you are saying something? Yes, sir?
Screen share is going on.
The screen share is on, sir.
Okay, madam. Today's corporate executive series is going on now. Now, this topic challenges and opportunities of power sectors in India. As in front of my students are there, I to give some short of, in brief, the power sector energy challenges, opportunities, and how to overcome. Just I'll give that small brief of that one as they to get this one. Now, how to transform that energy, how to create the energy each and everywhere in the earth, rather in the world, that each and every particle, so-called small particle, that is called atom. Atom is having two parts. One is center part and another is orbits. In that center, neutron and protons are there. Neutral is in neutron. In neutral, proton is positive in charge and electron is negative in charge, roaming in orbit. Whenever that going to get that last orbit is 8, that will be inert, or whenever tendency will come present of electrons less than 8 or more than 8, then they are trying to move from the neutron and this nucleus. If it is with the help of inject any energy or taking out any energy or any temperament, then electron will come out, and this flow of electron is conventionally it is called electricity. Rather, it is transforming the various types of converted powers we are going to get. Now, energy, whatever creating that properties with the help of electrons, that is coming under transform that property is called energy, and whatever the consumptions of energy, that is coming under called power, that is in always in what consumptions concerning. Whenever we are going to produce that this energy in power sector, lot many environment, internal and external environment includes with this one. Just boilers, plants, generation units includes everything with furnace. They are producing these properties of electron and transforming with the help of transmission lines to the particular end users. Now, for this one, various types of drives involved with this one. These all are called influencers. Lot many influencers are there for this power sector. Then point is concerning with maintenance, finance. These are all required. let it be daily inspection, let it be calendar inspection, let it be maintenance for hours, long hours overall, these things required. Then when we were producing the properties of electrons to transfer with the help of transmission line and system to end users. Then long term, short term, if it is long term for this environment linkage is there, definitely we are going to benefited. Now various types of power plants are there with the help of going to get transformed from various types of energies. Let it be burning off, let it be turbine moving, let it be we are going to any other ways. Different type of powers we are going to get, just like nuclear power with the help of fissions of atoms and energy from electrons to come out, we are going to get, that is nuclear power. With the help of firing gas, coal, then various types of diesels, fuel burning, after that on we are going to get that thermal energy. Geothermal energy we are going to with the help of springs, hot springs from the earth we are going to get. Then hydroelectric energy with the help of flow of water, let it be in any dam or any other places, we are going to get this thermal hydroelectric energy. Then sunshine will give with the help of energy, with the help of energy to the cell, whatever solar cells are there, transforming the energy, going to get that solar power, and renewable energy we are going to get with the help of wind energy. Now in India, a lot many energies sector-wise, nuclear energy 78.1%, 1.8 other fossil fuel energy from them, natural gas from natural gas 3.8, from coal 3.9, hydroelectric 11.1, and others weight to energy and wind turbines 1.3% we are going to get. Now, how we are producing the product? We are producing energy, but it should require to reach to end users. For that end users to reach their various types of transmission lines, that is also with help of voltage ups and downs, with the help of various types of ups transformers and down graded transformers, utilizing that one. Let it be 11,000 volts to 440 to 220 we can send. If it is direct, then 110 also to send AC and DC both. Then in between the distribution systems are there. From there it is reaching to store, where we can store the energy. From there we can give to the end users. Now 11.921 kilometer transmission lines, 220 kilovolt and above, and 35760 megavolt amperes transformers capacity has been added during 2020. Various types of growth drivers are there, rather it is called influencers. Various types of influencers are there. We may get the energy sector influenced, and it can go improved, developed. Now 2021, lot many improvement done by this present government. Here we can say industrial expansion. Let it be village, let it be this urban area. Everywhere now expansion of industrial, especially for the village, various cottage industries are developed, and expansion of this industrial belt activity boost demand for electricity. Growing populations, it is our cuts, but if you are utilizing populations in proper way, proper training and development, we can develop our country in industrial sector as well as domestic also, with the help of growing urban and rural population is likely to boost demand for energy. Market advantages also we can influence the energy in increasing per capita income with the increasing of per capita utilization and usages will provide further inputs to the energy as influencer for the industry as well as domestic. Increasing investments, more and more investments is going on, and FDI also we are going to get, which influence energy sector to growth. Then various types of fuels, fossil fuels, just like that coal increasing, then we are going to get more and more crude oil, though it is coming from that Middle East. But facilities are there. With the help of pipeline, we are going to get coal. Then highest ever coal production increase of 74 metric tons 2 years in. Then slogan is there for the present government: one nation, one grid, one frequency, and power for all, which is boosting as a good drives for the growth of the electricity. Then various types of problems are there. These are all problems: shortage of coal and gas, skilled manpower required for construction and commissioning of projects, land acquisitions, it is also a problem, and rehabilitation of the acquired people from acquired land. Then environment, internal, external, and forest concernings, also a lot of problems. With the help of solving, it is required only to solve interstate and contractual issues are there, not only for that labors and other things, also geological surprise also. Then pilferage, that is nothing but the small adjustments. You can say one type of jury also, adjustments of the electricity without giving tax, without giving fees to the government. These are all problems. Some of the issues and challenges faced by this sector pertaining to the four mentioned steps are as follows. Lot many I just shared here. One or two I can say. The poor financial health of power distributed units, varying electricity cost and bills in different regions, massive aggregate terminals and commercial power damage and losses, then inconsistent power supply duration in most of the rural areas, low quality of electricity and power distribution in rural and semi-rural areas. As per statistics, 300 million people still do not have accessibility to power in India. That is required very much to fulfill. If you are fulfill that slogans for power for all, energy for all, the northeastern sector, especially for and Jammu and Kashmir, J&K, they are still lagging for that fulfillment of power. Now, main challenges in the power sector, mostly we are getting two problems in India power sector: fuel supply uncertainty and deteriorating distribution companies, that is DISCOMs. Finance, considering the needs of coal and India's fuel mix of that one, different type of coal shortages can reverse severely impede investments in the emergence. And second one is that is PPA, purchase agreements, power purchase agreements available by states is insufficient. Then inefficient coal linkages, then poor infrastructure is still going on, we to overcome. Then according to government statistics, India has energy surplus of 4.6% and peak surplus 2.6%. Declining capacity of thermal power as the problem of various fossils fuel, lack of that one, the uneven distribution of renewable energy, and then high cost power plant installation, NPA, massive non-performing assets, massive in day by day increasing. Then payment delays of DISCOMs, then distribution companies, internal disputes between states over power and energy, the difference in cost of electricity between state and union territories and country national way, low quality and rural electricity supplies really power inaccessible region in India. With the overcoming the challenges, lot many opportunities also there. We can after overcoming the challenges, with the help of various types of alternatives to take out, best alternatives to adopted, and opportunities to be converted into beneficiaries of the people, citizens. Now various types of opportunities that we are structural changes really required according to the modern era and this very millennium era, then we should change our structural changes accordingly. Many companies deep dive into money saving tactics like budget cuts, quality compromise. All these things are there, should not. Then inventory issues. Toyota inventory distribution and controlling. Japanese technique Toyota, they are using just in time. It is, yes, definitely very good just in time. Some are sometimes if you are prompt, if you are not want to keep increase inventory management, then required prompt supplier and vendor to help you whenever your requirement is there. Just in time we can get the factor of production inputs, raw materials with others factor of production. Then network modeling. In addition, power generation is moving towards a decentralized model with non-conventional of distribution networks are there. Especially for that automation line, we to adopt. Then SCADA, yes. Then SCADA supervisor control and data acquisition is required. Then data management, then fiber optics, automations. These are all new things required model for that network. Data analysis everywhere required. Then electric vehicles for the future outlook are coming up to speed in cost and quality. Then government initiatives to promote power and energy sectors in all various points are there. During for this short time, not able to discuss only 2-3 points. Integrated power, IDPS, then RGGVY, Rajiv Gandhi Vidyut Karan Yojana, these various types of schemes. Then Din Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana, with the help of governments are taking various types of cares, and it is Kaizen, continuous improvement is going on. Especially for that various types of schemes also adopted by the government. Pradhan Mantri Sahaj Bijli Ghar Yojana, then Samadhan, that is also adopted. Then Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana also adopted. Then how to solve the electricity problem in India. These many points are there. Just only 2 or 1 points to discuss. Read this one. Then accurate regulation of energy and power supply across the different parts of the country. Installation smart meters in every household. It is required the government targets to install a total of 175 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity in India. In Maharashtra, so lot many places, new places, whenever that this hilly area is there, with the help of wind blowing, renewable energy we are going to get. They are trying also maximum for improvement. Then economic survey, various types of economic surveys are going on, how to improve this one. Then power sector budget, increasing budget more and more by the central government as well as provincial government. a budget of 22,000 crores proposed by the central government for power and renewable energy sectors, which will not produce the carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide. It is very environmental positive things are concerning. Then really it is required we to give this one, we to in our mind that always we are going to Kaizen effect for this one with the help of all precautionary measures. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you,
Haldar, sir.
Thank you, madam.
Am I audible to you all?
How to come out?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hupi Haldar, sir, for sharing your views with all of us. Much appreciate your viewpoints. Now, moving ahead, I request Professor Jalendra, sir, who is the head of the Department of MCA Department, to kindly address the students and the guests. Professor Jalendra, sir? Yes.
Am I audible now? Hello.
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Okay.
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Thank you, Dr. Haldar, sir, for sharing your valuable thoughts on energy and its consumption in power sector. Honorable Director, sir, respected faculty members, valued invited guests, and dear students. I, Professor Jalendra Gandal, on behalf of Dr. D.Y. Patil School of Management and MCA, welcomes today's eminent speaker, Professor Mr. Balasaheb Doipide, sir, CEO Scope Team T&M Private Limited, Mr. Akash Bansali, CA Chairperson Industry Relationship, and Dr. Satish Marathe, Industry Relations FIR, for today's corporate session on the topic of power consumption and energy consumption. We are grateful to Mr. Balasaheb Doipide, sir, for sharing his valuable thought on that 10% of products are come collaborative industry institute relationship. 10% of products are come from collaborative industry institute relationship. According to energy awareness and product consumption, we need to consider few points that will help to reduce the power energy and consumption. The first one is that choose the right light, eliminate the vampire power, unplug ideal electronics. Next, use a power strip to reduce your plug load. Fourth one, that is we need to do more research on thermal power and solar energy. And last one, that is use of IoT and application softwares in the field of power sectors to manage the energy consumption and its management. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Jalendra, sir, for your quick pep talk and your views. Now, moving ahead, I request Mr. Balasaheb Doipide, sir, to kindly address the session. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, madam.
Good morning, sir. Sir, over to you, sir. Please address the session, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rachna, madam. Dr. Khedkar, the Vice President of the Institute, Professor Haldar, from whom we just heard good insights about the power sector, challenges and the opportunity. My dear friend CA Ashok Bansali ji from FII, Mr. Satish Marathe from FII, other faculty members from the D.Y. Patil Institute, the audiences who had joined maybe online, we don't know from where, and most importantly, the important stakeholder, the student friends. Very good morning to all of you. My name is Balasaheb Doipide. I am CEO Scope T&M Private Limited. Just to reconfirm, I believe I am audible to all of you.
Yes, sir, you are audible to everyone, sir.
Fantastic. I'm just trying to share my screen. So just confirm after you are able to see my screen as well.
Yes, sir. Visible,
sir. We can, the screen is visible, sir.
Okay, wonderful. Mr. Ashok Bansali, in his conversation, very elaboratively explained us the intent or the objective behind this industry and academic interaction. In one of the earlier series, when we were discussing about this point, one of the speakers, he said that when the students get into the corporate world, they get a kind of a cultural shock because the culture is totally different. It comes with more responsibility and more accountability compared to the life our students have in the colleges. So these interactions will help us condition them from the cultural point of view, from most importantly the technical and the professional point of view. Sir also talked about the innovation and the kind of innovations that can happen because of these interactions or the cooperation. This is one area where probably we as a country are lagging, because there are many success stories around the world where industry and the academics has produced wonderful innovations which has helped the society. So probably we have a good amount of work to do on that, in that area. And I really appreciate the initiatives which are taken by FII in this area. I also thank Mr. Haldar for putting forward the opportunities and challenges, and right from the theory of how the electricity is generated, kind of to the macro view that he presented. I think he made my job easy. I will be referring to some of the things which he has presented in my presentation. Parallelly, I will try to give more insights about the Indian power sector. My objective or my effort will be, I understand that in audience we have mostly the MBA and MCA students. I also understood that some of the MBAs are having the engineering background. So when our students look for careers after they are final years, or when they are looking at the job opportunities, there are certain sectors which are popular and which weigh on the minds of the students. Like for example, nowadays if you talk about IT, for that matter the finance, or maybe automobile. But one of the key infrastructural sector of country, that is the power sector, is probably not having that kind of a visibility when it comes to the students who aspire to get into the industry.
Bala Sahib, sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Sir, the slide is not getting changed. I guess it's in the full screen mode, that's why. Are you at the first?
I had not yet changed the slide, madam.
Okay. I was in the impression that you're changing. I'm so sorry, sir, to interrupt.
No, it's okay. I know. Rather, thanks for that interrupt, because in this online era, we don't understand the technical glitches.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Please.
And madam, are you able to see my video as well, or only the slides?
No, sir, we can only see the slide in which it is written Indian power sector, your name.
Okay. So probably we are not able to see the slide as well as the video, I believe.
Probably, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, fair enough. Yes. What I was saying is that somehow, this power sector is not on the radar of the students. So today my endeavor will be to expose what this power sector in India is like to our students, wherein they consider power sector as one of the important areas where they can build their career. Now, why power sector is important? Or for that matter, why electricity is important? Now, how dumb is that question, isn't it? Because we all know why electricity is important. We cannot imagine our lives without electricity. And if electricity is important, then the sector which is governing that, the electricity sector or power sector, is obviously important. Only thing is, it didn't figure in our minds in that way. But since we have the MBA students, I will try to correlate that with the, the economy and the GDP kind of a thing. Now, the graphics that you see on the screen is basically showing the correlation between the per capita GDP and the per capita electricity consumption. So on the x-axis, you can see the GDP in dollars, whereas on the y-axis, you can see the power consumption. If you see the countries which are the most developed, they are on the right side and on the top side. Like you can see on the top right, United States. Then you somewhere in the middle, you will see the the countries like Japan and Germany. And as you start moving towards the left, you see that there are the countries which are having lesser per capita income, GDP, And at the same time, these countries invariably are having lower level of electricity consumption. And if you see the India, practically we are at the bottom of the heap. You see that very close to the origin, x-axis and y-axis. You can also see the growth there, because these the graphs are for a period of 17 years from 2000 to 2017. So you will see that there is a growth happening, of course, in every countries, the most developed countries. Probably there is a saturation because they already had reached to very high level of per capita consumption, and with advent of more and more energy efficient devices, probably that is something which is making it saturated. Now, the correlation that I want to highlight to you is that the studies evaluating the linkage of the electricity and the GDP growth has estimated that when there is a 1% increase in per capita energy consumption, the per capita GDP grows by 0.23%. So in short, when you have a 4% increase in per capita consumption of electricity, there is 1% increase in per capita GDP. So this means if you look at the future of India, currently we are somewhere at 1100 kilowatt hours per year per person. And if you look at the, for example, US, it is almost at 12,000. So it is almost 12 times, higher than us. So we have that much of growth, which we have to attain. And if we are going to reach to that, by this correlation, our GDP is going to grow. In other words, that government is talking about a 5 trillion economy. If we have to reach to that, there are tremendous amount of growth expectations in the power sector. This is another representation of that. This is how the per capita consumption varies in G20 nations. These are the powerful group of 20 nations which are, instrumental in framing the policies for the world. So here, if you can see that, in the Northern American side, the US, the Canada, somewhere in Asia, the Saudi Arabia, these are the people which are having very high per capita consumption. Whereas if you look at India, we are again, as was depicted in the earlier graphics, we are at the bottom of the pyramid in a way. So we have a long way to go when it comes to, increasing our per capita electricity consumption. And if that increases naturally, everything right from generation to distribution, the infrastructure has to expand rapidly. Now, where our power sector stands currently. So these are some of the numbers which will help you to put the things in perspective and for you to understand what is the size of our power sector. The first headline numbers is electricity generation in billion units. So if you look at the last 3 years, the data which is appearing there, for the last year we are somewhere around 1253 billion units. Not very easy number to correlate and remember for our students. But if you go to the next chart, it shows basically the peak demand in blue and the demand that we are able to meet in orange. So if you see more or less, in last 3 years, we are in a way meeting the peak demand of ours. And that's what Haldar sir was saying in his presentation, that we are energy surplus by few percentage. That is something which is getting reflected here. When you see the figure for the 2021, of course, it is a projected figure because the year is still running, 2021. But here we are expecting that we will be reaching out to the surplus level that Mr. Haldar was, talking about. Let's go to the next row. Here we are talking about the installed capacity. So we as a country are currently having an installed capacity of 377 gigawatt. Now, if you want to look at the bifurcation of that, the thermal still, has the largest share of almost 232 gigawatt. Then a small share from nuclear. And now the yellow one that you see is the renewable, which is fast catching up. So currently we have an installed base of almost 93 gigawatt or 93,000 megawatt when it comes to the renewable. And if you look at the rate of the growth, most of the growth is happening in the renewable segment and not into the fossil fuel segment like thermal or gas. Let's have a look at the the capacity addition that we had done in last 5 years. Earlier, these kind of things were measured by the 5-year plans, but with the advent of Niti Aayog, we no more are following the 5-year plan. But if you look at the growth in last 5 years, practically from 280 gigawatt to 370 gigawatt is what we had achieved in last 5 years, which is almost a 35% growth. So you can put this in the context of the install base that we had achieved. For example, say from independence, the amount of install base that we could have for maybe practically 70 years, 35% of that is what we had achieved in 5 years. So that in a way represents the kind of frantic growth that we are looking at. Now this is about the generation. With the renewable coming, the concepts of the generation, transmission, distribution are getting challenged. But traditionally, the generation was not happening at the load centers. Maybe somewhere on the eastern side of the country, you have more coal mines, you have more generation, whereas the load centers are situated somewhere on the western side of the country. So for that, you need to have the transmission lines. And the next graphic tells you about the kind of transmission lines we have. We have almost 434,000, that is 4.4 lakh circuit kilometers of the transmission lines in country. These are all figures on the EHV side, that is extra high voltage and ultra high voltage side. In our country, we are using the HVDC lines, which are few, but which are which are carrying the bulk power. So we have 800 kV HVDC lines, we have 500 kV HVDC lines. Then we on the AC side, we have 765 kV AC lines, we have 400 kV, and of course below that 220 kV, and then sub transmission and the distribution transmission lines. If you look at the kind of MVA capacity that we have in substations, we almost have 10 lakh MVA as a transformation capacity available in our substations. So even though in initial sites I said that we as a country are at the bottom of the the graph when it comes to the per capita consumption, still when you look at these numbers are significant. So by no means we are a small power sector. Of course, when it comes to India, everything about India is big. Yesterday I was talking to one of my partner from Finland, and we were just chatting about the vaccination drive that's taking place. And then I told him that that yesterday India did the vaccination of 3 million people. And then he said that Finland as a complete country has a population of 5 million. So maybe in 1.5 days, at the pace at which India is doing the vaccination, the entire Finland will be vaccinated. So that advantage of we being a large continental country is available with us, and that is going to reflect in these numbers. Now this is a bit boring part, but just for the sake of the students, I'm just trying to highlight the kind of a governance structure that we have in India when it comes to the electricity governance. At the apex, basically we have the authorities which are formulating the acts or the rules, deciding the policy, giving the policy direction. And for that, the Electricity Act in 2003 was act which was created, which superseded the earlier acts and gave a momentum or brought kind of a transformation and put India on a futuristic path as far as the transformation is concerned. Now we have a Ministry of Power and Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, MNRE. So they are basically responsible for legislative part, deciding the policy on the government's behalf. And then we have entity, a Central Electricity Authority, which is more of an advisory to the Ministry of Power, which is responsible for making the, giving the technical consultancy, making the standards, and ensuring that, the policies which are governed are there percolated down to the bottom of the pyramid through the various mechanisms. When it comes to the regulations, we have regulatory authorities, like we have Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, and for every state and union territory, we have the state regulators. Now, the job of the regulators is to regulate the tariff, to ensure that the approvals of the capex are done, which are not putting the burden on the tariff, etc. The third important component is basically the ones which are implementing, and for implementing this, we have a national load dispatch center, which is ensuring the demand management, which is ensuring the the scheduling the import and export of power, ensuring the operations of the larger grid. There we have under the NLDC, we have regional load dispatch centers, and then we have state load dispatch centers. And parallelly, we have transmission utilities. Till now, we had, Power Grid Corporation of India Limited as the central transmission utility for the India, a CTU for country. And when Aldar Saab was talking about one nation, one grid, and one frequency, that is something which Power Grid, achieved. But just 3 days back, government announced certain changes, and they had formed a new entity called as Central Transmission Utility of Utility Corporation of India, and they had changed the mandate of Power Grid, because nowadays Power Grid is also bidding like other EPCs for the TBCB projects. So there was a conflict of interest kind of. So this is a new development which has taken place. And at every state, we of course have these state transmission utilities. Like in Maharashtra, we have Maharashtra State Transmission, Maharashtra State Electricity Transmission Corporation Limited, MSETCL. And then on the supply side, you have the core electricity market, where right from the generation, transmission, distribution, consumption, those players are situated there. So basically, it flows from the policymakers to regulators to implementation and the market side. So this is the kind of ecosystem that we have in India for electricity governance. Fortunately, in the era of information, everything is available on the internet. The students can go to the websites of these organizations, authorities, and then you can get ample information. There is tremendous amount of improvement as far as the sharing of the latest data is concerned. So all the data is now available. Now I want to share with you some of the other indicators which will tell us what is the kind of growth that we can expect in power sector. As per the the International Energy Agency, India's power sector is expected to be the third largest in the world by 2040. And the graphic that you see on your screen, this is showing us different indicators, global indicators, like GDP is one of them, population, energy demand, coal demand, the battery capacity, and then what you see are 3 time slots there. One is 2000, 2019, and 2040. So 2019 is, you can consider where we are currently. So if you see, if you look at, for example, the GDP, for example, you look at the proportion of India in the global GDP in 2000, in 2019, and you look at 2040. Now we are looking at almost 12.5% of world's GDP contributed by India. So you can imagine, the kind of activities that are going to take place not only in power sector, everywhere in country. On the other hand, one of the issues that we had in being effective or efficient was the population. And you can see that our population is almost going to be stagnant, or is going to start declining by 2040. If you look at some of the other parameters for energy demand, for example, you can see that our energy demand is practically going to double from 2000 to 2040. Coal demand, the gas demand, everything is going to increase, and the contribution of India in this consumption is going to be significant. You look at the solar PV capacity, 20% of the world's solar PV capacity is going to sit in India. You look at the batteries capacity, we are looking at the 30% of the batteries are going to sit in India by 2040. So these are the indicators which tells us that we are poised for tremendous amount of growth. So when we as a student look at the future career paths where we can contribute, it's worth that we look at these particular indices. There is one more figure that I would like to quote. According to the India Brand Equity Forum, India is expected to see energy investments amounting to $100 billion by 2024. At one point, you start losing the track of these numbers, because they start getting bigger and bigger. Just remember that there is going to be tremendous amount of investment that's going to happen. When we talk about this sector, what are the issues or the challenges that we are facing? Haldar sir, spoke about some of the challenges. I'm just talking about one of the important challenge here, and that is something which is at the DISCOM side. I'll try to put it in a simplified fashion. DISCOMs are purchasing the energy from generator or generating organizations, and they are selling the power to the consumers. The average cost of supply is called as ACS, and there is an average revenue realized, which is ARR. And unfortunately, there is a gap between ACS and ARR, and there's a negative gap. So currently, on an all India basis, we have a gap of 55 paise per unit on all India basis. That means DISCOMs, when they are selling an energy, they are losing 0.55 rupee per unit that they are selling. So how their finances are going to be manageable? They are going to be in the losses, and that's why DISCOMs are in perennially they are in bad financial shape. There are only two states, Maharashtra and Gujarat, which are exceeding the ARR, rather where the ARR exceeds the ACS. In means they are profitable in a way. And now we have seen some of the other states that you can see which are very close to the zero, like for example Himachal, Haryana, Tripura, Assam, Puducherry, Kerala. They are trying to come very close to the break even. Now why this is so? There are naturally the two components to this. One is basically a term which is called as AT&C losses, that is aggregate technical and commercial losses. The assets are not in efficient condition, so there are technical losses, there are thefts of the power, and most importantly, the realization of the energy that is sold. That is the issue. We keep on seeing these issues. Now we are facing that in the lockdown the energy bills were very high, and then government they said that they disconnect the electricity for people who are not paid. Why this pressure is coming is because it's coming because of these gaps which become unmanageable. And unfortunately there is a political influence, there is pressure for free power, subsidy, etc., and then that makes the matter worse. And in order to make this sustainable, the government has to come up with the bailout packages for the DISCOMs. Other thing is that there are no enough capex investments happening, because of which the technical losses can be improved and this gap can be narrowed down. So there are other few areas where the issues are, but the core issue is this, and which is basically on the DISCOM side. And DISCOMs are the ones from where the revenue is generated. When you look at the transmission and generation side, they are pretty okay. But then as I said, the revenue has to come from the DISCOM side, and there these gaps are there. We are going to face the challenges. Of course, the policy makers are thinking a lot about this, and there are a lot of things which are on anvil, which are already implemented, which are being implemented, including the distribution, the privatization of the DISCOMs, etc. We'll talk more about that. So this was about the challenges that we are facing, rather one of the biggest challenge we are facing. Now let's look at the emerging trends in the power sector. What are the future things that we can look at? I had categorized them into 5 blocks. One is renewable energy, electric vehicles, smart meters, the competition, automation, and IoT. Now when we talk about renewable energy, we have a target. You saw that graphics where I showed you that we are around 95, 97 gigawatt currently, and there is a target of reaching to 175 gigawatt by 2022. This is very uphill task, but then the government is pushing for that, and we are looking at 430 gigawatt by 2030. That means the bulk of the growth is going to happen from the renewable side. The technologies for the grid integration, because renewable is not a consistent power, so integrating them with the grid is always a challenge, and there is a need of different kind of technologies in ancillary services, a smart grid, demand supply balance, which are going to be finding its place in the renewable energy sphere. When we talk about the electrical vehicles, more or less we are aware about what kind of a disruptive technology this is going to be. This is being talked in many discussions. Just to put one number to you, as per the Niti Aayog, this is old figure. A few years back, they projected that by 2030 India will have 26 crore of EVs. So look at this number, 26 crores EVs by 2030. Now this may get shifted here and there a little bit, but then this is the future by sure. And as you might have seen with the disruptive technologies, at one point, these technologies are adapted much faster than what we can imagine. So, when we reach to 2030, probably we will have more than these vehicles. We never know. With the EVs, EV charging infrastructure setting up is another area which is going to, have tremendous potential. And currently there is only a minuscule number of, around 1,000 EV charging stations which are put in the public sphere. The another expansion area is the smart meters. Government has taken the targets of putting, 200, almost 25 crores of the smart meters to be put. They want to put the smart meters everywhere, right from your home to the, DT level, feeder level, everywhere. Out of this, only 23 lakhs have been installed, and there are big tenders which are coming up for the smart meter implementation. Now, what this smart meter is going to facilitate is we have the data, and once we have a data about the consumption of electricity, there are going to n number of ways in which the data will be analyzed and how we can use this data for doing a lot of other things that we have to do. The another slightly different kind of emerging trend is basically competition. The sector is moving from a natural government monopoly to increased privatization. I just told you about the CTU, Power Grid Corporation of India Limited, which was a CTU. Now there are two different companies. Power Grid becomes a different company, and the CTU is becoming a different company. So that means government is in a way asking that you compete with the private sector. If you look at the installed base on the generation side, currently we already have almost 47 of the installed capacity coming from the private sector. Currently, you had seen that there are a lot of DISCOMs which are getting privatized. Very successfully, this was done in Delhi, where part of the distribution was handed over to Tatas, and part of the distribution was handed over to BSES, Reliance, which are running the DISCOMs there. Then we had also seen this happening in Maharashtra in some places. So this was like Tata Power now has taken all the DISCOMs in Orissa. What is happening is till now the distribution is basically privatized, but currently we still don't have multiple DISCOMs who are providing the service, and we can choose. Like for example, when it comes to mobiles, you are able to choose which plan you want to buy, from which company you want to buy a plan. Now this kind of a reform is required when it comes to the buying the electricity as well, and this is the future. But currently, till the time we are not able to bifurcate the content and the carriage, this will not happen. But this is an emerging trend. So this is about the shift from the monopoly to the competition, and of course the new age technologies in terms of automation and IoT. We know that what they are going to bring is essentially the continuous monitoring of the assets, gathering the data, using the machine learning algorithms to draw meaningful inferences, predictions from the data, do the analytics, and use that analytics in order to do the course correction. So with more and more convergence of IT, communication, these things are becoming feasible. As the scale is increasing, these things are becoming cost effective. And there are a lot of companies, India is, as it is a software, powerhouse. And there are a lot of companies which are, offering these software side solutions, which are replacing hardware side solutions at many places. So this, of course, on the technology side, we know this automation and IoT area. Another buzzword that you always must be hearing is basically, what is the smart grid? Smart grid. Everywhere we talk about smart grid, we talk about the smart cities. Smart grid becomes part of the smart cities. So what smart grid features are and what benefit is going to bring? Basically, smart grid is going to enable the connectivity between the assets, and that is going to help us to do real-time monitoring of the assets, automated outage management on the DISCOM side, distribution management system, outage management systems implementations, improved energy management, dynamic pricing mechanisms. This especially becomes important, when you have EV, you have a storage, and in order to manage the peak load, the consumers will be incentivized for using the power at the non-peak hours. Like for example, you have an EV, you can charge that battery at off-peak hours. You will get power at cheaper rate, and then you can use it for some other purposes during the peak hours. It is going to alter the pricing signals, which are going to be consumption based and time based. Now these enablers are going to give the benefits in terms of reduction of T&D losses, which is going to overall bring the profits to the operators. Peak load management, even though you don't have a peak capacity available. A reduction in power purchase cost, which will benefit the end consumers. Improved asset management, enhancing the life of the assets by looking at correct assessment of the assets, and looking at how we can enhance the life of the asset, which is typically called as a RLA, a residual life assessment, and a residual life enhancement, RLE. Increase the grid visibility. Now this is one important area. Professor Haldar also talked about this SCADA. So more and more SCADA are going to be put where we are going to have the visibility of what's happening. Currently, when you go to the distribution side, the visibility is very poor, and all this technology is going to head us to kind of self-correcting, self-healing grids. The decentralized energy generation and the integration of these decentralized, especially renewable energy generation into the grid. How the future grids are going to look like. On the left hand side, you see a traditional grid where there is a one-way flow of power. You have a generation, you have a transmission, then you have a distribution, you have a consumers. So power only flows from generation to the consumer. It's one way. But the new grids are going to look like what you see on the right hand side. There is going to be a two-way power flow. We are going to see not the producer and the consumer, but we are going to see prosumers, the entities which are going to be producers as well as the consumers. Like for example, we have a DY Patil Institute, and they decide that we want to put a rooftop solar on the institute. They will be, if they have a surplus capacity, they will be able to sell it to the, they will be able to put it to the grid. And when they want more power, they are going to draw it from the grid. And then we are going to have net meters sitting there, and you are going to be charged only for the net consumption. So this is going to be the way the new grids are going to look like, and this will happen sooner than the later. This is just another representation of that, from the center of a household, where you are going to use EV charging, you are going to use various appliances, you are going to have a rooftop solar on your home, etc. But the philosophy remains the same. The power generation will be powered more by the renewable sources. The thermal generation will be, depending on the strategy, will be used for the base or the peak load management. There will be solutions available for the energy storage, especially for the renewables. When sun is shining, you can charge your storage batteries and you can use it later on when the sun is not there, for example. Smart grids are going to overall give us increased visibility, data, analytics, which is eventually going to improve the efficiency of the overall grid operations. Rooftop solars are going to generate more and more power, which will be exported to the grid. The EV transportation, EV charging infrastructures is an area which is increasingly going to dominate the way the networks are going to evolve, because there are a lot of issues which are going to come with the EV. As we progress further, we will understand more about them, and we probably will be required to change some of our habits when it comes to EV charging, EV usage, and for that, of course, we probably will get some incentives if we are able to be disciplined. The electrical substations are more and more going to be automated by using the SCADA and the visibility tools, and smart cities are going to be the future. So this is how the future electrical network context is going to look like. Next two slides, I'm going to talk about some of the use cases of the technologies like IoT, maybe a technology like a blockchain. In the discussion that I had till now, I probably had touched this particular aspect of where you can use the IoT. In short, what is IoT? IoT is just two devices which are communicating on the internet. So when mobile phones came, we thought that it will be used for making up voice calls. But then you just imagine the journey of mobile phone, how it has expanded from that simple voice call device to practically a device which you cannot do away with. So this way, IoT is also a technology. This technology is going to help us for doing a lot of things, and the applications that we are not able to see today will become the reality tomorrow. Currently, what we envisage is this is going to be used across the power generation, transmission, distribution spectrum, smart meters, EV management systems, smart cities, everywhere. Real-time weather monitoring systems on the renewable side, the real-time monitoring and control of the assets and the equipments, fault detections and asset health managements, predictive maintenance so that we avoid the failures of the assets by doing the just-in-time maintenance. And when it comes to the other areas like smart cities, the smart street lighting, water supply, storage monitoring in real time, maybe surveillance network, etc. So a lot of things are going to come up as we move forward, which is going to use this IoT more and more. When we talk about blockchain, since Mr. Bhansali is here, who is expert on the blockchain, I'm not going to talk much about the blockchain, but what we see in terms of the use cases in power sector, there is going to be more and more peer-to-peer power trading, and the infrastructure for that is going to come. There's going to be energy trading happening in the EVs, vehicle-to-vehicle trading. The EVs can trade electricity in charging stations in a P2P manner, where EVs with surplus electricity discharge energy. The EVs with surplus electricity will discharge the energy to the EVs where they have a demand of electricity. So these kind of things are going to happen, and blockchain everywhere is going to provide a secured, trading system or a transaction system. We also look at, the areas of protection from the cyber attacks, where this technology will be increasingly used. And of course, the areas like asset health monitoring, fault diagnosis and maintenance, which form the critical part of the smart grids. Blockchain is definitely expected to improve the security, reliability, and aid into the high efficiency. Of course, as I said about the mobile phone, when it came, we were not aware about where it can be used. In the same way, when we are talking about these technologies, currently we don't have all the answers where it can be used. The ongoing energy transition, will throw up a need for more and more creative solutions where these technologies will be used. Cybersecurity is coming up as a very important domain. You personally might have come across a case where there is some sort of a hacking, some sort of a threat coming from a cyberspace. Recently, Ministry of Power has come up with a notification where they had said that any bidder which is bidding for the government tenders, and if that bidder happens to be from a country which is sharing the land border with India, they need to do the registration with authorities of India. We believe that primarily this is triggered by the clash with the China on border, and the kind of inroads China has made into the power sector by selling tremendous amount of assets, whether it's a transformer, whether it's relays, whether it is the SCADA systems, whether it is the gas insulated switch gear. A lot of assets of Chinese make are now sitting in Indian power sector, and there can be imminent threat from the cyberspace. So for that, these measures are being taken. These organization structure architecture being put in place. There is an entity called as CERT and NCIIPC, which are going to look into these cyber security threats, and this very shortly is going to become part and parcel of anything that we intend to do. So these are all new emerging trends which are going to come in power sector. These are the areas where the young minds, the innovative minds are going to contribute in accelerating the developments which are going to take place in these domains. Now, before I end, I just want to talk a little bit about what my company, Scope T&M stands for Test and Measurement, Scope Test and Measurement Private Limited, is doing in this entire spectrum. See, Scope was formed around 32 years ago with the objective of developing those testing and measuring instruments which are required to be imported. Friends, today we are having enough foreign exchange available with us. But back then, 32 years ago, some of the senior members will remember that foreign exchange was very, very valuable commodity. And it was, something which was very important for the government. It used to dictate some of the aspects of the foreign policy as well. So we decided that we will develop some instruments which are required to be imported, and we chosen EHV substation as a domain in which we'll work. And we developed the testing diagnostic instruments for substation equipments like circuit breakers, power transformers, CTs, PTs, surge arresters. And I'm very happy to tell you that all the products that we developed technically are at par with any best product that you can have anywhere in the world, and offering completely indigenized technology. The market share that we have for some of our products, it ranges from 60% to practically 100%. Even though there are imported options available, people are still going for scope product, not because we are cost competitive, but because the kind of quality that we are able to offer and the kind of local support that we are able to offer. Couple of products like dynamic contact resistance meter for circuit breakers, or surge arrestor, leakage current monitoring for the surge arresters, which are extremely important tools for asset management or asset health assessment of the circuit breakers and the surge arresters, are indigenously developed by us, and we are the only company in India who are having these products. So we started off with this T&M domain. Then almost 13 years back, we expanded into the sphere of the protection and automation, where we started offering control and relay panels. I'm very happy to tell you that Scope has developed our own SCADA system, which can not be used only for the substation level as a substation automation system, but even at the SLDC level, where the entire state power is controlled, from the centralized SCADA. So that kind of a SCADA system which we have developed, which has got the approval from a company like Mahatransco for up to 400 kV class. So these are the activities which we are doing in India. Currently, government is talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India. But since last 3 decades, Scope is trying to do this Make in India or Made in India very diligently. Now, we also have a company called as Isosceles Sales and Service, which is devoted for providing the services. Because when you build a new substation, there are turnkey contractors which take the contract for the entire substation. But the niche area of this turnkey contract is testing and commissioning of these important assets like transformers, circuit breakers, protection relays. And we being, the pioneers in the testing area, our customers in a way pushed us that you develop or you come up with the company for the services area, where we are, doing the complete testing and commissioning of substations right up to 765 kilovolt substations. We had done more than 500 numbers of substations throughout India, and also few abroad. When it comes to our testing and measuring instruments, we had exported our instruments practically to 50 odd countries. Our products had won Best Product Award in various exhibitions, including Elecrama exhibition, which is happening in India, and which is now the biggest exhibition in world when it comes to the transmission and distribution. And in last 15 years, we had won 4 Best Product Awards in the Elecrama exhibitions, which talks about the quality and R&D efforts that we are putting within Scope. Now, as we spoke about the IoT solutions and the data analytics, we had been working in this area for last 5 years, and we have floated a company called as Oxagrid, registered in UK, wherein we are offering the hardware sensors. We are offering the kind of visibility softwares like SCADA systems, but most importantly, we are working in a domain of providing the analytics, which will eventually help that the heap of data that we are gathering, we are able to extract the meaningful information from that data. We are able to predict the trend, and we are able to tell in advance the likely failures that can happen, where the asset managers can take corrective actions just in time and avoid the failures which can be catastrophic. So these are some of the areas in which Scope is operating. We are a company having group manpower of almost 350 people. Bulk of them are engineers. You can reach out to us on these social media handles and our website, that is www.scopetnm.com. So friends, this is about what our company was doing, and this is about what I wanted to share with the students as far as the overall picture of the power sector in India is concerned, where we are heading, what are the emerging trends. Just to conclude, I would like to share few takeaways with the students. With the advent of smart grid, utilities need solutions to make sense of the heap of the data. This transition requires really creative solutions, and these creative solutions are not going to come necessarily only from engineers. They can come from MBA graduates, they can come from anybody. IoT is going to change the landscape, not only of the T&M industry, of course, but everywhere. And we are getting increasingly exposed to that possibility. The DISCOM privatization is on the anvil. So there will be more and more privatization of DISCOMs, and there will be need for the fresh talent with creative thinking, which these private organizations are going to hire. Use cases to make our electrical network more secure from cyber threats are going to be the need of the day. We talked a little bit about that. And most importantly, tell yourself that Indian power sector is very, very critical for the growth of Indian economy as a whole. And this sector is on the cusp of a transformative change. And I invite you to become a change agent in this change. So thank you very much. Maybe I had taken 5 or 10 minutes more, but I thought that, it's worth sharing these things with our students so that they are stimulated enough where they go back and they start doing more research on the power sector and start finding the opportunities where, they can innovatively contribute in the overall progress of the sector and the country. Thank you very much.
Bala Sahib, sir, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Sir, I just want to ask a question. Out of curiosity, this question arose.
Yeah.
I just want to ask, during pandemic situation, the pandemic arose and there was a lockdown in the whole nation. Was your company anywhere supporting or related to the government in some or the other contributions or in terms of medical health support or anything like that, sir?
In fact, we made one small effort, as you know, this pandemic, thrown up the requirement of various gadgets and tools. And one of them was for the thermal scanning. So actually our company was dealing with the thermal imaging cameras, which are used for screening the hotspot in a substation assets. So we allowed this to be used by the municipal corporations for scanning the humans, where, you need to have a fast scanning of the influx of the people. So this is one, immediate thing that comes to my mind, where we contributed in the initial phase during this pandemic.
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful. Sir, our sincere gratitude and thanks for your company and for your leadership for this. I request if anyone has any questions regarding anything, the forum is open for a few minutes so that you can ask anything with our eminent guests and speakers of the day. Any one of you can raise your hand.
Yeah, I'll be very happy to answer the questions.
Yes, sir. You can even type your questions in your chat box. Okay. Sir, assuming that they don't have question right now, but I'm sure that they are definitely going back and reading your slides and understanding again. And if in case there are some questions, I'll definitely be in touch with you regarding the same.
Madam, I see.
Sir, there is a question from. Yes. There is a question, sir.
Yeah.
Can you tell me the exhibition name, sir?
Yeah, actually, this exhibition the exhibition that I mentioned is called as the ELECRAMA. Now, this ELECRAMA exhibition is organized by an organization called as IEEMA, IEEMA, that is Indian Electrical and Electronics Manufacturers Association. So IEEMA is organizing these exhibitions, I think, from 1992. Earlier, these exhibitions were taking place once in a 3 year. Now they are taking place once in 2 years. And the next exhibition is expected in somewhere in February, March 2022. So maybe you can go to the website of IEEMA and you can understand more about this ELECRAMA. But this Electrama exhibition has now grown to become the largest exhibition in the world as far as the transmission and distribution of electricity is concerned. So all the people which are in this domain, they are generally participating, visiting this exhibition.
Wonderful. Wonderful, sir. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Any of the students, if they have any question, I'll just give you a few seconds. Okay. Moving ahead, I request Bansali sir to kindly address with a vote of thanks.
Yeah, our heartfelt gratitude to Ajinkya DY Patil team, Dr. Khedkar, and some valuable insights from Dr. O.P. Haldar and the entire team. That's Dr. Rachna Gaur, Dr. Srikala, and Dr. Ashutosh Khedkar. I must say, Mr. Bala Sahib Dorfude has done an phenomenal opening of our minds to the power sector, and there is much more to it than what we know of. Electricity or power is invisible, and there is an invisible power of the power sector to bring us more careers. I'm thankful for this phenomenal insights which he has brought in, and we hope that we can host him in the future based on the questions of the students and the curiosity. So actually, I would say what would make anybody tick or TICK is technology, innovation, competition, the best guru, and knowledge. Knowledge, academia is giving. I'm certain all the professors at Ajinkya DY Patil are giving all the knowledge, the practice, the theory part of it, combined with the practical insights. I think the power sector is definitely a powerful sector to pursue careers, and one which also contributes to GDP. I thank all the students to join. I thank all the faculty and the team at Ajinkya DY Patil for hosting this event and for bridging the gap, which is the objective of FII. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It was wonderful, interacting with all of you. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Bala sir, there is a question just popped out in the chat box. As you can see that what is the future of solar energy in our country?
Okay, so as I mentioned, I also thrown some figures, so if you look at the kind of renewable energy overall that we are looking at, currently we have an install base of 177, currently we have install base of 97 odd gigawatt, and we are looking at by 2022, 175 gigawatt, and 430 gigawatt by in next few years. If you want to see the contribution of solar into the renewable, it was 50-50 till few days ago. Just few days ago, solar has overtaken the wind. So when it comes to the renewable now, the solar is it has just inched ahead of the wind. But when you look at the future expansions, the bulk of the future expansion is going to happen in solar. So the lion's share of this, 430 gigawatt or 175 gigawatt is going to come from solar. And in our country, still the rooftop solar has not really taken up in a big way. There are various reasons for that. Still the bulk of the solar power is coming from the large scale, the grid category solar powers. But as it has happened in, for example, in US or some of the other countries, if the rooftop solar comes in a big way, then it's going to probably leave behind everything else much faster than we anticipate. But that to happen, it's not only about the technology. There will be the business models also will be required to be brought, which are able to make this happen. But as far as solar is concerned, solar is going to have a lion's share, and it's very good for us as a country, because we are a country which is having abundance of the sunshine. So we are playing to our natural advantage. So it's a good thing which is happening.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Bansali sir, thank you for such a warm vote of thanks. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Bala Sahib sir, also for addressing with such important topics like importance of IoT and the creative thinking. Khedkar sir, would you like to add something to this valuable speech?
Yeah, I would like to thank both of you, and you are our HOD, Dr. Haldar sir, for giving a lot of information about the energy and training our students, and also giving them that idea there is a lot of opportunities available in this particular area, and the area is very very important, because without energy, nobody can work. Every sector, everywhere, energy is required, and there are ample chances of job opportunity. Not only job opportunity, the business opportunity in this area. Industry, yes, some can establish the industry also, some can have their own entrepreneurship in this particular area, and therefore definitely this particular session will be very very useful to our students. I thank on behalf of our chairman Dr. Ajinkya DY Patil and Dr. Ajinkya DY Patil group, to both the speaker for giving your valuable time and guiding to our student. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I would like to take this opportunity for an official vote of thanks on behalf of my institute. I, Dr. Shrikala Prasad Bacha, on behalf of our institute, Dr. D.Y. Patil School of Management, extend our sincere thanks to the respectable and eminent speakers and guests for the day, Mr. Ashok Bansali, Mr. Balasaheb Daipode, and Dr. Satish Varathe. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable time, your valuable inputs to the students. I'm sure that it is definitely going to add them to their knowledge. I also extend my sincere thanks to our director, Dr. E.B. Khetkar sir, for providing this opportunity through his support and guidance. I also thank our training and placement officer, Dr. Rachna Gaur, for coordinating this event so wonderfully. I thanks Professor Ashutosh Khetkar and Professor Shubham for supporting us on our technical aspects. I support Dr. Devashri Jana for her assistant coordinations as well. And last but not the least, I thank all the faculties and wonderful students for their active participations and patience listening. Thank you so much. Thank you once again, and looking forward to hear from you all again in near future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So shall we end this meeting on this note?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah? Okay. Bansali sir, Balasaheb sir, Satish sir, I hope everything went well.